What's up, everybody out there in the internet? It's us. We're inside your computer here on Aftermath on YouTube. And Jimmy, Kevin, and Anthony and I are talking about the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling. Do you even know what Mount Rushmore is? It's this giant monument carved out of stone with very important historical figures. Their heads are gigantic. And so if you were going to make your wrestling Mount Rushmore, would The Undertaker be on it? The Undertaker gave his answer, which was Hogan, Flair, Stone Cold, and Andre.
Wow.
So what's your answer? Do you put The Undertaker on your Mount Rushmore? Let's start with Jimmy. You were there. You knew the guy.
Yes, I did know the guy. And for me personally, he would be on my Mount Rushmore. I'm an Undertaker guy. I can't stress enough how valuable he was, not only as an in-ring performer, but how valuable he was to the entire locker room, and what a big presence he was for everybody. Filling out the rest of that, it's almost like you want to have two guys that you can put there permanently and have two rotating heads on the mountain.
Like when you change the sign of what's available today at your store?
Exactly. Like definitely I would put, agree with Taker, I would put him, but I would also put Ric Flair on there because Ric Flair, for longevity and for how long he did it and how great he was. Now it gets a little difficult. Like I'm not going to put current guys who are currently on the roster, because you got a guy like a Randy Orton who's definitely eligible when he decides to hang it up, and other guys like that. But you got to definitely put HBK in the conversation. I think he, despite his early annoyances to the other members of the locker room, he was still great in ring, and filling out that other spot. Wow. You know, I've got to go. You got The Rock, you got Stone Cold, you got anybody from the Attitude Era, but at the same time, for someone who elevated wrestling to the status, you got to go Hulk Hogan.
I would think the Hulkster would have to be in the conversation. Kevin, what about you?
This is the thing, man. Like, Jimmy, you've listed so many guys. I mean, it's so hard where to start and where to end. I mean, how far back do you go? I mean, should we go all the way back? And like for us Canadian folk, like, are we going to say Whipper Billy Watson should be on the Mount
I
Rushmore?
would probably say Whipper Billy Watson.
Gene Kiniski.
Exactly. I mean, you got so many guys who have made that kind of impact on the business. For me, though, I'm just going to go to my fandom. What made me a fan of wrestling? And I'm going to start with the main two, and that is Bret the Hitman Hart, Canadian, and Shawn Michaels. Those are the two that got me into wrestling growing up in the early to mid 90s. And then from, again, a fan standpoint, as I continued to grow up, The Rock and Stone Cold, they're going to round out my Mount Rushmore, just because
solid.
Those two those four kept me invested in wrestling for a long time. I mean, HBK, the lengthiest of them. I mean, The Rock, he's the biggest star in the world, not even just wrestling. He's the biggest star in the world. Stone Cold, the most popular wrestler of all time. And Bret, he's just the catchphrase. He is the catchphrase. And I can't say enough about any of those guys. So those are my four.
Anthony, go for it.
Okay, I'll just say them, and I guess I'll explain them. As Buddy Rogers, Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, and Ric Flair. Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair seem to be the staple across the board. One of my criteria was who held down the fort, and Bruno Sammartino held down the fort for a long time. Buddy Rogers is the favorite wrestler of most of your favorite wrestlers.
Exactly.
And he was just a consummate professional in and out of there. He was in his time, incredible megastar in society, The Rock wasn't there long enough. Undertaker if there's five heads, he's there, you know what I mean? HBK and Bret Hart, man, they're obviously in the conversation. And John Cena's in the conversation as well, because he held down the fort during a time when wrestling, the business kind of took a dip, even there's an economic crash in the United States in 2008, and houses weren't very full, but Cena was that driving force that was keeping the business going. And a lot of guys, like Ric Flair, for example, calls him the greatest of all time just because of what he did and his work ethic. And but anyway, that's my 4: Bruno Sammartino, Buddy Rogers, Flair, and Hogan.
And my 4 is going to be weird because I'm weird. But I also looked at it like I could name, Hogan, Stone Cold, Rock, maybe Shawn. You can put all these guys in this conversation. But for me, the people that really drew me to wrestling were the people who could do it all. The people who could entertain as well as go in the ring. Somebody who was as good on the microphone as they were wrestling another person. And Flair's on that list for me. Owen Hart is on that list for me.
Wow.
Roddy Piper is on that list for me.
Yeah.
And I have if I could do, Jimmy, where you could have a head and then turn it to have another head on the other side, my rotating spot. It's a real toss-up, but I went with 2 of the most entertaining people in the history of wrestling, and I'm talking about the history of wrestling. One side would be Gorgeous George.
Gorgeous George, I know.
Gorgeous George. That's
And the other side would be Sweet Daddy Siki. If you guys do not know who Sweet Daddy Siki is, do your damn homework, people. That guy broke molds and broke hearts all over the world. Sweet Daddy Siki, Canada's own.
I'm surprised nobody had Harley Race in there.
I do love Harley Race, but Harley's interviews were not legendary.
No, but you mentioned Sweet Daddy Siki. Uncle Reggie is awesome, and not only that, he's a great country and western singer.
You can still. I did karaoke with him in Toronto. He still hosts a karaoke night. He's
nobody
fantastic.
Nobody had Dave Schultz in there.
Dr. Death.
Jim Londos?
Dr. Death.
Jim
Guys,
Londos?
but I could put Bigelow and Akeem and Bundy on the same. Like I would have a series of Mount Rushmores.
Gosh, yeah.
They're all
Andre
has. I mean, for me, Andre gets his own. He just gets his own.
Let's just make it a mountain range. How about that? A mountain range.
We should just do one of guys that ended up in movies: Piper, Hogan, Andre, and Bundy from Moving with Richard Pryor. Guys, let us know your Mount Rushmore on Twitter. Use the hashtag AskAftermath and make sure to tag Jimmy Corderas because he wants to know all of the guys you would put on your Mount Rushmore.
It's the greatest debate in wrestling. Mount Rushmore, who's going on?
We say it all the time to use the hashtag AskAftermath. That's literally so we can click that and see all of your stuff in one spot. It's just for organizational purposes. That's the only reason we want you to use it. So guys, stay tuned because we've got trivia coming, and I believe Jimmy Corderas is hosting. I'm very excited.